In the year 1845, at the height of the Victorian Age, 2 ships and 129 men sailed into the frozen Arctic. It was the best-equipped expedition the world had ever seen. Not a single man came back. What happened to them became one of the darkest mysteries in history. This is the story of the Franklin expedition. In the spring of 1845, Britain set out to claim the last great prize of exploration, the Northwest Passage. It was a hidden sea route over the frozen top of the world, a shortcut between the Atlantic and the Pacific that could make a nation rich. For 3 centuries, explorers had hunted for it, and most never came home. To lead it, they chose Sir John Franklin, a 59-year-old veteran of Arctic exploration. His 2 ships, HMS Erebus and HMS Terror, were marvels of their age. Their hulls were plated with iron to smash through ice. They had steam engines, heated cabins, and libraries holding over 1,000 books. They carried 3 full years of food, tons of it sealed inside thousands of tin cans, a brand new technology. England was certain. These men would tame the Arctic and sail straight into history. In July of 1845, whaling ships spotted Erebus and Terror in Baffin Bay, waiting to cross into the pack ice. It was the last time anyone outside the expedition would ever see them alive. Then silence. Months passed, then a whole year. England waited for news that never came. We now know what England did not. By September 1846, the ice had closed around both ships near a desolate place called King William Island. They were trapped, frozen solid, and the Arctic winter, with its months of total darkness, descended upon them. They waited for the summer thaw to set them free. It never came. The ice held, and a second winter closed in. Inside, the men were dying. Scurvy rotted their gums. The cold gnawed at their bodies, and something invisible was poisoning their minds. The lead solder sealing their tin cans was leaching into their food, slowly making them sick, weak, and confused. By April of 1848, 24 men were dead. Among them, Sir John Franklin himself. The survivors faced an impossible choice: stay with the frozen ships and die, or walk out across the ice. On the 22nd of April, 1848, the remaining 105 men abandoned Erebus and Terror. Before they left, an officer scrawled a note and sealed it inside a cairn of stones. It would become the only written record of their fate. The note began with the words "All well," then scribbled in the margins the terrible truth: Franklin dead, ships deserted, the men marching south for their lives. What followed was a death march across one of the most hostile places on Earth. Incredibly, they hauled massive boats on sledges, loaded with silverware, books, and useless trinkets, even as their bodies failed. One by one they fell. The frozen ground was far too hard for graves, so the dead were simply left where they dropped. And then the survivors did the unthinkable. To live just a little longer, they began to eat their own dead. For over a century, England refused to believe it. But the proof had been there all along. The local Inuit had seen them, staggering skeletons in the snow, and they had found the bodies, with the marks of what the men had done. England dismissed the Inuit accounts as savage lies. They were wrong. Every single word was true. Modern forensics later found cut marks on the bones, undeniable proof of cannibalism. In 2024, one skull was identified as Captain James Fitzjames. He had survived the ships. He had survived the march, only to be eaten by the very men he once commanded. Search parties scoured the Arctic for decades. Franklin's own widow funded expedition after expedition, refusing to give up. They found scattered bones, abandoned boats, and frozen relics, but never the whole story. The ships themselves had vanished completely, swallowed by the ice for more than 160 years. And then, at last, the Arctic gave up its secret. In 2014, using sonar, searchers found the wreck of Erebus resting on the seabed. 2 years later, they found Terror, eerily preserved in the freezing water, exactly where the Inuit had said it would be all along. The Inuit had been right the entire time. The world had simply refused to listen. Today, divers glide through the silent corridors of the ships, frozen tombs at the bottom of the world. But the deepest question still has no answer. We know they froze. We know they starved. We know what they were driven to do. But exactly how 129 men met their end, out there in the white silence, that secret the Arctic has never fully given back.